This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.
Hey everybody, it's John Hall, the senior editor of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, and I have a hard time believing that it's taken almost a year for me to utilize the Jersey City, New Jersey home office to welcome our first guest here to New Jersey, where the writing magic happens almost daily, sometimes weekly. And for that, I asked a guy to cross 2 rivers to get here, all the way from, I guess you came from Brooklyn, but your brewery's in Queens.
Came from LIC, Long Island City today.
Chris Cuzme.
Hello.
Fifth Hammer Brewing, the former president and president emeritus of the New York City Homebrewers Guild and the Malted Barley Appreciation Society. For all of you homebrewers out there who listen to other podcasts, but why would you? You might also recognize Chris from Ferment About It, a podcast that he does on the Heritage Radio Network with his wife, Mary Azette.
Yes, she's lovely.
Thanks for being here in Jersey City. So, Chris, the brewery's been open for about a year now, Fifth Hammer.
Less than that, we're 10 and a half months young.
Okay, so coming up on a year then.
Yeah.
You have an extensive homebrewing background, though, and one of the things that I've been struck about, and you have worked at other breweries before. You were at 508, which was a short-lived but much-loved brewery in Manhattan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're gritting your teeth as I say that.
No, I love it. At 508 Gastro Brewery.
I
loved it there. It was awesome. It was in that way. I mean, especially on topic, like that was started by a home brewer, not me, and that was a very Frankenberry system. So like as far as like a stepping stone into this world, that was a really awesome amalgamation of doing great things in small spaces. That was a really, really cool place, and a place where if you're brewing on such a small scale for a lot amount of people, you have to brew all the time. So that is not, I'm not gritting my teeth. I got gritty there and really got, discovered this as a vocation, brewing over and over and over and over, like probably 170 different types of beers there in the basement.
So, all right. So you sort of spoiled it because I was going to say, like, how small.
I'm excited about it.
Like how small a system and how small a space. Because I toured this brewery and you and I were intimate, just standing there next to each other because of there's no other floor space.
Yeah. So it was roughly 100 square feet in the basement of this restaurant in Soho, and
that was what, like 5 blocks up from the entrance to the Holland Tunnel,
right? And 1.5 blocks away from the Hudson River.
Yeah, West Side
And so
Highway,
I
Hudson
took it
River,
over just after we had a horrendous storm, Sandy, and that whole brewery, its fermenters and everything else, were kind of floating around in the East River water. When I came to it, and I had to basically take it apart and put it all back together and clean it up to get, which was great because like
that's humbling, right?
It was awesome, and also it was helped me really learn the system because I knew where I was putting everything back together with.
That's a benefit, right? Of knowing your equipment. When I talk to brewers who jump jobs and go from or started a new brewery or something, like a lot of home brewers or a lot of brewers who have gone pro talk lovingly of their first system because they were so intimate with it, because they know it so well. But when you jump into a place where you don't know the system and you're learning the tricks and the intricacies and all of that, like there is a steeper learning curve that comes, right? And even from home brewing, where you know your own rig, to something else, even if it is a small system like what you were working on at 508 Gastro Brewery.
And so that's true. There's a learning curve on every system.
Every night. Yeah.
That's true, right?
I spent a lot of time there. Yeah.
Oh boy, you do. I mean, it doesn't matter, even if you're homebrewing, going from one setup to another setup, there's a learning curve on every setup and the methods that you're dealing with, just size of vessels and like getting something from concept to glass. You might have been brewing your entire life, but you're using a new system. You're going to have different extraction, or just different efficiencies and different things going on. And I think it takes a second in any system to hop over. And that's why I think I really reserve the word brewmaster or the title brewmaster for people who kind of can hop into anything and kind of really hit their marks, and you need like 30 years of brewing on lots of different things before I would even use that term for anybody.
Well, there's also course classifications and continuing education and all of that as well. But do you see that as a word that gets thrown around too much?
Yes. But I realize that's also just particular to me, or me and a few others that we just really hold that title in high esteem. But I mean, anybody can brew if you have the money to buy a license to do it and to brew professionally. And that's one kind of thing that's kind of silly out there. And it's one reason why we have seen a little bit of inconsistency by way of quality over the years. Although it's much better now than it has been, and when it kind of boomed a few years ago.
Yeah.
Because the information is out there, and the consumer standards have gotten higher. So everybody's brewing to higher standards, but that they're putting on themselves as well as the audience, which I think is important.
And of course, the education is key in all of this. But so as much as people can demand better pints because they know what better beer should taste like and they know what flaws and defects are, it's been interesting because I've heard the word brewmaster just thrown around casually, which it really shouldn't.
I agree.
So do you find yourself, like, when people show up at your brewery now and they say, "Oh, you're the brewmaster," right? And they mean it as a compliment, like they mean it as in earnest.
I do correct them.
You
I say,
do?
"No, I'm the brewer, but I am head of this house." Like I say that. I always try and say that I reserve that for people I respect, like out there in the world that have been brewing far longer than me, and I am not worthy. But I do say, yes, I'm in charge of the recipes, if that's what you mean, or like, this is my house, and we work together here. And even I'm trying to set up a thing at Fifth Hammer where it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. I want it to be like, yes, I started it, but I have a great co-brewer right now who's named Brett Taylor, who's going to be starting his own thing as well at some point, Wild East. He's looking forward to that. But I consider him my co-brewer, not my brewer's assistant, or not my, we talk about recipes and talk about what to go with next. And I'm glad to be at that stage, even just 10 months in, to where we can kind of finally have a team. I mean, I was doing everything until Brett came along like 2 months ago. No, 3 months ago now, I guess.
And now he's already eyeing the exit.
No, he was eyeing the exit in the beginning
of
this too, because I didn't have full-time work necessarily. He had left his former position because they knew he would start eyeing his own thing, and like I know how long it takes to open a brewery in New York City, and I was like, well, if we hire him, especially because he only needs some part-time, he needs time to think about opening his own thing. It's perfect. He's the perfect candidate. He went to American Brewers Guild just like I did in Vermont. So he has the brewing science, tech, and engineering knowledge there. He's been brewing in the basement. We have a basement background together, sort of like he was brewing in the basement at Keg and Lantern, and on a small system at Strong Rope before that.
Both Brooklyn breweries.
Yeah, both Brooklyn breweries, and he's looking to open a place pretty much exactly the size as me in Brooklyn on the same equipment as this. So it was perfect for him. He gets some training. Everybody wins here. I get some time to be able to do things and expand the bandwidth.
I think that attitude is important. We're talking in an era right now where there are lawsuits being batted around by brewers who are angry that brewers that they once employed went someplace else. There are certain breweries that are asking folks to sign non-competes when they sign up. And as the industry continues to grow and even becomes a little bit more consolidated, where people are fighting for taproom dollars and shelf space and tap handles and everything, people are starting to hold things a little closer to the vest. And the thing that I like about you guys, and you personally, is, you are so affable when it comes to talking about what you do and sharing what you do. And I wonder how much of that is still because, you still think of yourself as a home brewer in a lot of ways, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, and so I'm definitely trying to preserve that attitude that I had home brewing, and I would. The only reason I don't consider myself a home brewer is because I'm not actively home brewing anymore.
But the attitude of a home brewer, I'm sorry, that's a better way of yes.
Everything. I don't ever want to lose sight of why I love brewing and the art of Zimmergy, and that all started at the homebrew level, and it is based in a playfulness and a creativity and perpetuity kind of way, and that's what I'm trying to bring to our Fifth Hammer, just ideology and what we're putting out is that creativity and perpetuity. I'm a promiscuous drinker and therefore a promiscuous brewer. I brew a lot of different styles because I'm also coming from that brewpub background from 508, where we only served our own beer. 508 Gastro Brewery, where we only served our own beer, but only had 6 lines. So I had to have, I had to make sure I had something for everybody there. Some people went there for the food, some people went for the beer, and they either stayed for either or. And I had 6 lines, and I kind of treated that with like 3 for them, 3 for me, sort of, and those 3 were very playful and collaborations and kind of wacky ingredients or not, but all with a standard of quaffability. Is that a word?
Sure, it is.
You're an
now.
editor, okay.
Yeah, no, if you say it, it's
quaffability.
I mean, I have to quote you accurately.
Just great drinking beers that you know I follow Garrett Oliver's philosophy about beer, where the first sip of your first or the last sip of your fourth beer should be as good as the first sip of your first beer, and those are the kind of beers I want to make that are drinkable like that. Even if I am using some crazy ingredients or whatever it is, I want them drinkable like that, and not your 2-sip 1-hit wonders.
Let's talk a little bit about the brewery. What happened to the first 4 hammers?
The first 4 hammers, they're so beautiful and harmonious with one another. We discarded them, unlike Pythagoras, who discarded the 5th hammer. So 5th Hammer is the name of the brewery, and it's based off of a story of Pythagoras. Pythagoras is credited for a lot of things. He is credited, but among them he's credited for discovering the mathematical relationship between musical notes. And the story goes he got into this because he was walking by a blacksmith or a forge, and he heard this sound. He's like, "What is that sound? It's beautiful. It's amazing. I gotta know what that is." He went inside the forge, the blacksmith, and these hammers were hammering on an anvil. 4 of the hammers were beautiful, harmonious with one another, and the 5th hammer was discordant or outside the realms of conventional harmony. So 5th hammer to us represents individuality and not needing to conform to any norms. Doesn't mean we make all wacky beers, because every hammer has its other 3 hammers to be beautiful with.
Well, and that's the thing. So I was looking at your tap list, and in addition to the beers of the moment, the beers of the day, the haze that people like, you have
like them too.
You have something called a spicy American brown, a summer stout, a coconut summer stout, and then you have a brut IPA on, which I want to talk to you about after we talk about these others as well. But like a spicy American brown.
Yeah. What's great for summer? I don't know. In hot weather, like if you eat a chili pepper, can get those endorphins going, and a little bit of sweat can sometimes cool you off. I made a traditional American brown, not too traditional, like a hoppy American brown. It's got notes of chocolate, and I used a bag of chocolate malt, bag of brown malt, some Simpson's Naked Oats on top of a Maris Otter base with American ale, English ale yeast, and then hopped with Chinook and Simcoe, and then dry hopped again with Chinook and Simcoe. So you have that pine and citrus kind of thing that's really cool. And then we found this pepper at the Food Bazaar, which is one of my favorite grocery stores. Me and Mary love this grocery store. Well, Mary hipped me to it, of course, as she does. She does. Yeah. She finds these crazy things, and but we're in New York City and lucky to have it. They have so many different peppers, but this pepper is called the Puya pepper from Mexico, and seco means dried. So we took Puya seco peppers, and we basically dry hopped this beer after dry hopping it with the actual hops. The flesh of the Puya pepper has like this kind of dark cherry raisin thing that's really cool and dances with the malts, but also kind of like tames a little bit of that and dances with the citrus and pine. Yeah. Whereas like the heat of the pepper itself like kind of doubles down on those bright aspects of the hops, and it's really hip. I'd be remiss not to mention that both this and the cocoa summer stout that you have, this is part of our Fun Tank series. So going back to this homebrew attitude that we have and that we play with over there, one thing I learned at 508 Gastro Brewery also, in order to keep diversity there, I would often make a single beer, and then in the keg I would dose it with different, dose it or dry hop it with different spices, herbs, kind of like getting two beers for one. So a neighborhood brewery, Big Alice, was expanding, and they were a 5-barrel system. They're still a 5-barrel system, but they were getting rid of their 5-barrel tanks to switch out for 15-barrel tanks. When we were opening, and we bought one of these 5-barrel tanks, which we adoringly call our Fun Tank. So in our Fun Tank, that's where we'll do some of this. So our regular brown ale, we took and threw it into this Fun Tank, and that's where we dry hopped the thing. So I have the regular brown ale on tap. They're the same base beer, and in the Fun Tank we put the Puya seco peppers. And same thing for the summer stout and the coconut summer stout. In the Fun Tank we threw a bunch of toasted coconut. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. When you're thinking about the Fun Tank and you're thinking about some of these ingredients that come your way, do you think of a base beer first and then hey, it'd be fun to find a pepper or some sort of tropical fruit that will go along with it, or are you just walking the food bazaar, tasting things, looking for things, reading menus, and then saying, I wonder how this will work in X, or is it both ways?
It's absolutely both ways, and sometimes it's the construction of a beer from concept to glass sometimes starts with just a name or a word or some alliteration that you think is really funny. Okay, what beer is that? And then you go to that. I mean, then sometimes it's like, oh, I want this flavor, and like, okay, well, what's that flavor? And then where are we going with that? How do we then what are we going to call it?
Yeah.
And then sometimes we're running out of beer. We're a professional business, and I need to make 2 beers for one. What would make sense right now this time of year and all these other things? I didn't do that in either of these cases. Like we knew that we wanted the summer stout.
And what makes a stout a summer stout, by the way?
In this case, for me, it's almost like a dark mild. It's a 3.8% stout. It's wonderfully crushable. It is bright. It's like thin-bodied, but the roastiness comes out. You get this kind of coffee and chocolate roastiness that really works, but you have the 3.8 percent, and you got a decent body on it from flaked barley, and it's cool. I mean, it's a wonderfully drinking stout. If you drink with your eyes, it'll surprise you because you're like, oh, I don't need anything that thick right now, but it's actually wonderfully, dare I say, quaffable again. It's a lot of people's peeve, that word quaffable right now. I think so. I don't know.
Is beer Twitter angry about it right
Twitter
now?
is angry. I don't want to hear the word quaffable anymore.
Don't tell me about kids and breweries. Yeah.
But anyway, sometimes I'm in the middle of brewing this beer, like we're in the fermenter, and I'm going down the line, tasting things, making sure everything's cool, and then an epiphany will happen and be like, wow, this would be really good with this. And then I'm already deciding, okay, do we need a full 15 barrels or a full 30 barrels of this beer, or can I spare 5 barrels to throw into the fun tank and go and ride with this? And sometimes like that, and then I'm going to the food bazaar being okay, what am I going for on this one?
So you'll go to the food bazaar and you'll go and try to find stuff after you've made a beer, after you've tasted it off the tanks.
Yes.
You have a 15 barrel brew house.
Yes.
30 barrel fermenters, I'm guessing.
2 30 barrel fermenters, 2 15 barrel fermenters. We did just order 2 more 30 barrel fermenters.
All right, business is good then.
Yeah.
But you can do that though, and you can run and try to find something that will suit your needs.
To an extent, like when we're talking about fruit purees, it gets very sometimes it's too hard to get for a 5 barrel thing.
Sure.
They don't always have the quantity that you need to express itself well.
And when you're talking purees though, are you getting like from Oregon, from like those farms that everybody loves, or are you trying to find something closer to home, or are you trying to do it yourself?
When I'm planning far ahead, or like I got at least a week ahead of time that I can deal with the shipment for that, then I'm definitely getting from Oregon Fruit Purees or Greenwood Associates in Illinois. When it's just like, oh my God, this would be great with mango puree. Let's go to the food bazaar and see how many of those little 14-ounce packets of Goya puree we can get that we have to just like sanitize and cut down and then dump them in. And that has definitely happened on more than several occasions. And those are great, like Goya, Lafay, and this is straight from our homebrew playbook. Like we would take basically 1 or 2 of these 14-ounce packets, frozen packets, after a beer was done, throw it into our corny keg with the puree, and have like this great fruited IPA or session sour kind of thing directly with this. And those are great products.
Yeah.
For this kind of playfulness.
And it does give you some flexibility with seasonality, because we're recording this in early August. This is airing in early August, and we're already seeing the pumpkin beers on offer. They've been showing up for a while, and it's the complaint that everybody has every year of, oh, it's showing up so much earlier. And there's the people who either are really excited by it, or the people who say, can we just have Labor Day first, please, and then you pumpkin people can go and have it. But when you have something like, you can make your standard summer stout, because like you're going to have to start making that, before summer, or you have to start thinking about that or getting it on your schedule for when you want it to come out. So even if it's when you're planning out in January, you can think about that. But with your fun tanks, you have the flexibility of capitalizing off of what's popular right now.
You can call audibles, exactly.
Yeah. So in the same way that, like, I was talking with another brewer about this recently, where they're always looking for trends. Is our raspberry suddenly hot because the New York Times food section talked about it? Well, shit, let's get raspberries into this beer, and that's a bad example, but it's something along those lines.
You're assuming I do a lot of scheduling ahead of time, but I'm notoriously guilty. I mean, I have to get it together, man, because things are bigger and a little bit more things at stake.
You would now that
because now we're brewing 15 to 30 barrels at a time.
Yeah.
And at 508, I was brewing 2 barrels at a time, or like yielding a barrel and a half, and we would go through that pretty fast. But I had a lot more fermenters there. I had 11 fermenters. Here I have 4 fermenters, so I make a lot, but it's got to last a certain amount of time, and it does last a certain amount of time. I'm starting to go through it a little faster because we're busy. But that sort of playfulness that I used to really grab onto as an improvising musician as well. I mean, I don't know if we talked about that, but there's
you're a musician.
I know, but I'm talking about the my parallel here with the playfulness of spontaneity as an improviser. Is one thing I really loved. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, you play music, really?
No,
okay,
no.
let's
No, just talk. Anyway, things are a little different now, so I have to be a little bit more ahead. But I'm notoriously guilty for like late August and early September having a bunch of these 3.8% things, because the beginning of August in New York is like super hot, and all I want to drink are these small beers, and so I'd start making them in early August, which is a little bit too late. You want to be drinking them while I'm doing it. Hey, the shipping guy is here.
So, in addition to scheduling, though, what are some of the other bigger things that you've seen going from being a full-time home brewer, or being known as a home brewer and running a guild and all of that, to now running a pro shop? Because there's certain things that you can get away with as a home brewer that once you go pro seem like luxury, seem like sort of fun things that no longer apply. Like, is there something else scheduling-wise that, or aside from scheduling, that jumps to mind when I ask that?
Most immediately, when we're talking about the fun tank and kind of extracting flavors and combining them with beers that we already have, one thing we're not allowed to do is use alcohol and make, or like hard alcohol, grain alcohol, and make extracts of them. So, for example, a very safe and fun way to get like herbs and spices into your beer with control and not overdo it or get too vegetable or anything else like that is to take some vodka or strong grain alcohol. The cheaper the better. The least amount of flavor the better.
Pop off.
Yeah, exactly. Get like the $6
the ones that are advertised from the back of Jersey Transit buses.
Yeah, that stuff is to throw some herbs into
Plastic
that.
Candles.
Get that, and then basically kind of dose back to taste in your keg or at the end of a beer to the right dosage to get the exact flavor you want, and that can be a pretty safe way. But I am not allowed to do that on a commercial scale, and just as far by way of flavor composing flavors, I have to figure out a different way to do that, which is why it's easier for me to dry hop, quote unquote dry hop, or do that kind of extraction with made beer that is or done completely fermented beer at terminal gravity that is generally of the stronger kind.
Yeah.
And the risks of doing that at the end of, I never really loved doing it at flame out, but sometimes it works, but you have to be exactly right. But as far as like how much you're using, I've always been a fan of using the extracts, basically, and I can't do that. And the other things,
do you find yourself walking around the brewery like when you wish you could, but you have to go the legal route these days, and just trying to contact your state legislators or the TTV?
I just let it go. I mean, I don't know. If it's not an option, it's not an option, and there are plenty of I don't know. There's freedom within structure, right? So I'm just like, okay, well, I can't do that. So out of sight, out of mind. Where can I go? Where are the places I can go, and how can I make the best beer I can with the by the means that I have? And that's something that I had to learn very dearly at 508 Gastro Brewery. So we talked about the brew house being in 100 square feet. I had another maybe 75 to 100 square feet with the fermenters in it that was inside a room with a little air conditioner. So everything fermented at the same temperature, and I kept that room usually at 65 degrees, thinking that the inside or the liquid temperature when fermenting would be like anywhere between 65 and 70. So, and I was always trying to average around 68, which is a great ale fermenting temperature for most of the things I did. When the beers were at terminal gravity they were all on casters, and I would roll them out of that room like a full, and then
these
down
were
the hall.
plastic fermenters too, which always just made me like,
Me
the
too,
beers were always great, but
Me too. Made me nervous every fucking time. But I did finally get 4 stainless.
Yes.
Towards the end of that thing. 7 plastic and 4 stainless. I'd roll them out of that room to another room, which was kind of like I could only get it as cold as like 40 degrees. So my cold crashing was really more cool crashing. But the yeast flocked and I got things out. It was just harder and longer to carbonate. I bring that up because, like, that freedom within structure I embraced, and I kind of came to love the quirkiness of it. I mean, it was frustrating as all hell, but I also I like a good challenge, and I certainly that was challenging, but I took it on, and I like it. I'm glad not to have to do it anymore. I'm glad to have full temp control, of course.
I'm remiss that in the intro to you, I did not mention your musical background. It's something that I took for granted because I've known you for so long. We were old drinking buddies, I should point out as well.
We were old then, and we're still old.
We're still older and have swelled a little bit more. I mean, going back the better part of a decade, if not more at this point. And I know you as a musician, and I think that a lot of folks in the New York City beer scene, in addition to your homebrewing, like, know you as the guy who plays sax. And you play every week at the brewery now. You have played breweries around the country, around the world, certainly around the city. But music is as much of a passion for you, it seems, as brewing is.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not complete if I'm not doing both. Like, I don't consider myself a musician first. I don't consider myself a brewer first. I used to consider myself a musician first and foremost. But all the parallels and what I've kind of become is I'm definitely not one or the other, I think, at this point. And 508 was kind of where that turned into that.
When you say that they're parallels, are they in different silos, or do you find that they combine in your life?
No, they combine in my life for sure. The parallel I speak of is kind of like the concept of getting a melody from my head to the ether, and like getting a flavor from concept to glass. And you can't just think of a melody and pick up a saxophone and make it happen. You have to know that. You have to know that instrument and know the elements of how to get what you're imagining out there. And then the other parallel is also that when we make a beer, there's only so much of it. It's fleeting, and your experience of that beer depends on who you're with, who you're around, with the environment that you're enjoying. Beer to me is very similar to music and to improvised solos. Like it's only live that first time you get it. So drink it fresh, and you'll get that live experience. If you're lucky enough, it's recorded around and it's there. But a solo is a fleeting moment, and for me as a player, when I'm improvising a solo, it's there and gone. And then we're riding the high of that moment.
I love that as you're talking about this, and this is the downside of audio and radio. Your fingers were actually mimicking playing the sax as you were talking about that, which is how ingrained this is on you. I wonder though if I'm trying to think of how does one affect the other? Like, does beer affect the music that you play? Like, obviously, like you can think about building a recipe, or you can think about improvisation. I'm sorry. Does it go the other way around? Does drinking a beer inspire you to come up with a new tune? Does it inspire you to play something different? Like, do different beers have different moods for you?
Absolutely, and so this is what I do on Wednesdays. We do a thing called Beers for Ears,
okay.
And so each beer alone certainly gives me a flavor. Oh, sorry, I'll say what we do first. So Beers for Ears is basically we go down the list of every beer that I have on tap. I have different musicians that play every week, and we improvise to the beer itself. So basically, my wife Mary and our bartender Britt bring me beers, or bring the whole band 2-ounce pours of a beer, and we play music based on that beer.
Is this your beer?
Yeah. I go down my tap list.
Okay.
It's quality assurance while playing every Wednesday night.
The second set is completely different than the first set. Yeah,
it's good. It's good. It's a good hang, yeah. and it is super loose, and it's really cool because the different musicians interpret the beer in a different way and like express themselves on it, and they're like, oh man, this one's kind of bluesy. This kind of has a darker tone, or like this kind of has like bright overtones. We'll play something major for that. It's insane to and really, really inspiring to play with musicians that are open to this idea and fun, and it's interactive. So we put a music stand in front of us, but it's not facing us; it's facing the audience. So we say, now playing Neighbor Brau Pilsner, or now playing, Troublesome Jellyfish IPA. And so that if somebody's like feeling the groove, they can come up or they can be like, oh, I want that. Whatever they're playing, I want that. And so that's pretty fun. So when I have a beer alone, certainly there's certain emotions that come up with that. But like I was alluding to earlier, kind of depends on, I believe that beer is like music, a soundtrack to our good time. It's always worthy of the conversation, but doesn't have to be the conversation. And as a soundtrack, the perception of it is heavily influenced by your the conditions in which you're drinking it.
Yeah.
And so, even though we play some of the same beers every week, music is totally different based on how we're feeling, what we've drank before,
who we're
playing with, and so there's that. I'm not sure how much I've answered your question, but as far as like the beer influencing the music, I experiment with that every week. Through this Beers for Ears, and oftentimes if I'm composing, which is very infrequent. I'm not the biggest composer. I live for this interaction. I mean, our philosophy of Fifth Hammer also is beer is people. We have that up on our board. Beer is people. Going on this concept, like the beer is just one part of. The beer itself is just one part of this whole thing.
Metaphorically,
that is this beer culture.
Okay.
It's not Soylent Green,
okay.
No. That's right.
Low-hanging fruit. Hull does it every time. Yeah.
Until I make a beer with peas and apples, beer won't be people. People.
That was a stretch.
Okay.
All right. Let's have another beer. You get funnier as
it's like our second set.
But you're not composing all that. But like, do you hear something and say? Because everybody talks about pairings and food pairings are out there and cheese and all the other stuff. I like this idea of music and I like things that sort of fit a mood.
Yeah.
And have you ever had somebody else's beer and immediately just get a tune in your head because you have these two combined passions?
Yes. But I can't cite any right now in particular.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that exists.
Yeah.
And then how how do you capture that though?
Or is that just
okay?
Yeah. Well, you mean how do you capture? How do I make another beer in that vein?
Or would you? Or is it just these are two really intimate experiences?
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out is there a way of sharing that, or is there a way that people can do this themselves in a way to think about?
People can definitely do it. You just have to. It's really. Like a lot of things when it comes to tasting beer, you have to trust in yourself that there is no right or wrong. It's not hard because everybody knows music. Everybody has this language within them, and everybody has songs that they like and melodies they like. It doesn't have to be, just say, okay, the first song, what's the first song that's going to come? Think about it before you take your first sip and be like, I'm going to try whatever. I'm thinking about music, or I'm thinking about trying to find a song for this. You just take a sip, and then first thing you think of, write it down, just see what it is, and put it on, play it, check it out. I don't know, and then think about it. That's step one, is just doing it.
Okay.
I don't do this because I'm doing it naturally. I don't consciously do it that often.
Yeah.
But I do it. All of my fermenters are named after different people, and so when I'm brewing, I do when I'm brewing into Coltrane, I'm playing Coltrane. When I'm brewing and knocking out into Bird, I'm playing Bird. When I'm brewing into Sonny Rollins, I'm playing Sonny Rollins, and when I'm brewing into Paul Gonzalez, I'm playing live at Newport 56, Duke Ellington. Then everything goes through my bright tank, which is Dexter Gordon, of course. Long, tall Dexter.
This would be a fun experiment for anybody who's listening right now. If you're tasting a beer and a song pops into your head, take a picture of the beer and tag us on Instagram. Let's do Instagram, right? Because you guys do that as well.
Yeah.
We're Craft Beer Brew on Instagram, the magazine. Where can people find you?
At Fifth Hammer Beer.
Okay, is it
Fifth
spelled
Hammer
out?
Beer. Yeah, FIFTH Hammer.
Hammer
Beer. Or at Chris Cuzme, either way.
Okay, yeah, and I'm at Mr. John Hall because I like to be formal on these things. But yeah, tag us on Instagram if you're thinking about music and thinking about beer at the same time, because I'm curious to see where people are coming from in this.
And I hate to say you don't. Maybe you don't know, John. I don't.
You don't know me. Our New York Jersey area is coming out right now. Don't tell me what I know. Don't tell me what I don't know. Yeah.
To this regard, we live in New York City, and there's a lot of events that happen all the time, and that are, and some of them, most of them, are straight ahead beer centric events. And I think that we would be doing ourselves right by creating a lot more events where we're talking about interactive things that aren't just straight ahead beer events. Like, first of all, there's always the beer and food pairings, but there's beer and music pairings. There's beer and beer and wrestling, beer and music, pairings, beer and beer pairings, beer and spirit pairings. And I think that, as the scene continues to grow, we would do ourselves wise to share with people who don't already come to it. I think that's the fun thing. I don't know why I'm saying all that.
Okay.
I had a big conversation about that over the weekend because we just finished up a celebration of women in the industry.
That's right.
Week, and Mary was a feature of that. And there were a bunch of seminars. It was a really well produced week, and it culminated in an event that the theme was celebrating women who have achieved in the industry, and it was one of the most interesting beer festivals I've been to.
Brewers Without Beards.
Beers Without Beards.
Oh, Beers Without Beards.
Beers Without Beards.
Okay.
Put on in conjunction with Hop Culture.
Okay.
And the festival itself was just awesome. It was such good energy, such good celebration of women in the industry, and there was the diversity of that audience and the they're so well behaved too. I didn't get a lot of the regular people going to a beer fest just for the sake of drinking as much as you can within a small period of time. There was a theme that was really cool, and the beers that were there were delicious and awesome. So, and I think, I don't know, more like that. The more theme events that aren't just the beer.
Well, you touched on community a little bit, and I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Long Island City itself, where it's on the other side of, so I guess if you're looking at a map of Manhattan, which the center of the world for most people, and you're sort of looking at Midtown, and then you go east, more or less, right? You guys are off of the 59th Street Bridge.
Yep. Yeah. And we could take the New York Ferry, New York City Ferry, straight from 34th Street, right basically to our street.
But it's an area that within the last, less than a decade now, has really popped, both for residential space, which was a lot of warehouses beforehand. It wasn't necessarily a desirable part of the city, and then switch flipped, and now it's one of the hotter areas in the city. And it's not just you guys, but there's several other breweries all within walking distance of each other. And you guys have this little brewery district going on there. It's not even a little thing. It's like it's a brewery district.
It's a big thing.
I'm not diminishing it. What's the appeal of that part of the city for you guys? Why'd you go in there? Because Brooklyn is still hot, even if it's oversaturated. Staten Island's impractical. The Bronx still seems to have not taken off, but Brooklyn was really, I think, where everybody had their focus, and you guys decided to go to Queens, and I imagine there was some reason behind that.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily a staunch decision that, hey, we want to go to Queens, although Mary and I have loved Queens for quite some time. You can find the entire world in Queens. Like, the quality of food and the authenticity and of the diversity within Queens is it's incredible and to die for. A lot of the night markets and the Chinatown of Queens. I could go on and on about the awesomeness of all of Queens. Queens is very, very big. LIC, Long Island City, where we are, is relatively small, but sounds like an offshoot, but it's not. At one point, 40% of all the things that were produced in New York City were produced in Long Island City, Queens. So there's a lot of spaces that lend themselves well to breweries at still an affordable price for that. Whereas Brooklyn has a lot of stuff was made there, and there's some warehouses there, but not everything is zoned for manufacturing. LIC still has a lot of manufacturing zoning. They're obviously, developers are really trying to replace a lot of those manufacturing buildings and warehouses into sky rises because you can see the city from there. It's really close. We love it because it's close to New York City. You're one stop away from Grand Central Station. You can take the G from Brooklyn. Like, we're right, we're 5 minutes from Brooklyn. Mary and I live in North Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And it's 10 minutes getting there. I mean, you hear the word Queens, like, I can't go to Queens, it's so far, but it's not.
Well, it's like
right
folks
there.
who, say coming to Jersey.
Right.
It's
right.
oh,
Jersey.
Oh my God, I gotta
exactly
cross a river. Yeah.
Yeah. But to be fair and entirely honest, we did have 7 leases that fell through, some of them in Brooklyn, over the course of a year and a half, trying to find what would be right for us. And I am so glad that they fell through, because the prices that they were asking in Brooklyn were more than made sense for our model. And we're finding a lot of success here because there wasn't, even though there's 5 other breweries, actually maybe in part because there's 5 other breweries, we're doing great and successful. Like, we're able to celebrate it as a brewing community. There's 5 others: Transmitter, Rockaway Brewing Company, Big Alice, LIC Beer Project, and Alewife Brewing Company just opened, and Iconic NYC is opening up a couple blocks from our place as well. And we're excited about all of that. And each one has its own special room or special vibe to it, like a unique experience. And
yeah, there's a great feature on beerandbrewing.com on visiting Queens breweries, and I encourage everybody to go check that out. But you brought up this interesting thing of you sort of hinted at budgets and logistics and all of that. There's a huge difference between, no matter what size you are, brewing in a congested, populous metropolitan area versus setting up in Milton, Delaware, or setting up even in the Pine Barrens in Jersey, or even upstate New York, where there's a lot more room. There's also a great appeal of being in one of these populous centers where you have foot traffic and you have people who live within walking distance. People don't necessarily have to get in a car. I love that on your cans. I just opened up a can of your Pilsner here where it has a city grid map on it and all of the nearby subways
for
as well.
our
Like,
place.
it is so,
if we're putting a can out,
New York.
let it get people there.
Right.
Those cans are
we're going to be
advertisement.
drinking these on the subway anyway, so we might as well know where to get off and get them. But you visit a lot of breweries. You talk to a lot of breweries. I mean, what's the great frustration for you brewing in a city when you go out to a brewery in a less populated area where you say, God, I wish we could have this. I
think it always comes down to space. I mean, even though our space might be slightly larger than some of the smaller breweries in New York City, we're also smaller than some of the larger breweries in New York City, but we're definitely way smaller than most of the breweries across America. That have more that have sustainable models. Like space costs a premium here in New York City, and I think that's why we haven't seen a whole lot of breweries in the city for a very long time, until the Craft Act was passed to be able to let us serve beer by the glass, and therefore make the margins by direct consumer sales that can help pay for that square foot of space used.
But does it put a governor on you in that this is probably as big as you're going to be able to get, at least in this current model?
Yeah.
I mean, without a huge windfall of cash where you can go and knock down the building next door or blow out a wall into the building
or
next
start
door.
renting. I mean, thankfully for us, our landlord also owns the building next door, and he's
cool.
He's doing his own business out of there, but doesn't need all the room. So I think at the very least, we're going to start bleeding in there with some storage.
But not
things.
everybody has that opportunity.
Right. Most people do not.
So you have to say to yourself, though, if you're opening up in the city, okay, we could probably max out at X barrel capacity.
For sure. Yeah.
And then
there's a finite growth thing, and even then you want to kind of go slowly into that to make sure that you're not expanding too fast. And
would you think about another half model? They just announced that they're going up to Rochester, and they're going upstate, and
I'm not sure, and most of that's because, I'm not in brewing for the money, and I don't need to be making a lot of beer. For me, it's a lifestyle choice. Like, I really love brewing, and I love the celebrating in house and making music in the house. And like, I don't want to be too big, and I don't necessarily. I've worked at big breweries, like between 508 and here. I had some stints at some larger things, and I don't know. I really
this
like.
is not for you.
I like it small. No, well, I don't see it as a necessary thing for me. It's not a goal.
It's not a black.
I feel like
and white
that's I feel like that's going to happen accidentally. Maybe like I think that we're gonna. I'm not going to be opposed to it. I mean, I like money too, I guess. Except there's no money. There's no. I mean, you get bigger, then you get more staff, and then you get this, and then you create a place where you have to be selling a lot of freaking beer in order to support the lives that you're now supporting as a business owner. And I want to keep it as small as possible and make as long as I'm able to make a diverse range of beers and have that supported. That's really what I want to do, because I'm addicted to this creativity and perpetuity thing. I'm still a home brewer at heart. I'm like, oh, what flavor can I do now? That's what I want to do. I want the opportunity to keep doing that. And I don't want to fall into like a production thing where I'm meeting the demands listen, the consumer is obviously, I do it for you, but I also do it for me. Like,
To that point, I wanted to get back to mentioning that you guys have a Brut IPA on tap right now, which is a style that I've written about in the magazine. It's up online if people want to see it. It's come out of out of the West Coast. We're seeing it pop up around the country. I haven't seen too much of it around here so far. I'm going to hazard a guess in saying that you're one of the first, because it's still a pretty new style. Yeah. One, how did you approach it? But before that, like what appealed you to, what appeals to you with this style?
I want to let no style go untouched and unconquered by my brewing skills. Like, I don't, time I'm not inspired by the brewing. Like, I partly that personal challenge. I like challenging myself, and it's a beer that I'd never tasted before. I mean, I haven't tasted anybody's except mine, so I don't even know if I really hit the mark. And for my own personal, we'll get to that part. But so the Brut style is a response from California to our New England hazy IPAs, and they wanted to make a basically New England style, or the flavors of the New England style, that really fruit forward kind of like hopping at the same kind of hopping rates that you do with that, but have it be super dry, clear, with a champagne like carbonation, is from what I understand it, the gist of it and all of this.
More or less. I mean, I wrote the story on it, so you all can go and read it online. But yeah, sure. We'll take your version for right now.
So this is what I intended. I mean,
it was an experiment with this enzyme that dries everything out that they're using in big boozy stouts. And
what could this do for
could this do for an IPA? Is essentially the thought behind it.
Okay, I read a different article, perhaps not as thorough as yours, but it was like, in addition to, they use this to do that, and it's kind of their response with this thing.
I don't know if everything has to be like a fight between.
I agree. I thought it was a practical joke, honestly. I
thought we were done with the whole East Coast West Coast thing, but either way, that's all right. But please continue.
I'm not doing this with any sort of animosity against the West Coast. I was born there. Well, not born there, raised there a little bit. Anyway, so when I approached this beer, something I've never tasted before, that was my understanding of it, or kind of like, I was thinking from a flavor profile, wherever it was coming from. You want a dry beer, you want the fruitiness of a New England IPA, and you want a champagne-like carbonation, and the clearer the better, just because.
Yeah.
But
Kim at Social Kitchen told me that he wanted an SRM lower than 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I used a little bit of a wheat in there, and a little bit of oats. I kind of had the grist bill, sort of like my New England IPA, just with less oats and wheat, and the rest all Pilsner, to be a really light SRM. And then my first hopping was after Flame Out, whirlpooled at 165 degrees. Was the first time it saw hops. So you get that fruitiness first, and I used the enzyme in the mash, because what I was reading about the enzyme is that if it sticks around in your fermenter, your next ferment could actually be hit with that. Yeah. But if your cleaning practices are fine, and I am pretty damn clean, I think.
You'd hope so.
Anyway, while I was brewing it, I got nervous, and I kind of backtracked, and I used it only in my mash and not in the fermenter. I did throw a little bit into, while I was transferring, I threw some into my boil kettle, but my terminal gravity was really just over 1, whereas some people use it and it can get down like really to 0. By 1, I mean 1 Plato. Yeah. Some people use it and it can get lower than that, like down to 0 or even just below. When I was thinking about it flavor-wise, which I know I keep saying that, so it sounds like I'm saying, but I was thinking about flavor-wise. No, I was conceptualizing a champagne with a dollop of fruit in it, or like with a strawberry in it, or like with a melon or something like that. So I kind of wanted that kind of like, not that really, really dry thing, but something that was effervescent and kind of. I think we achieved that. I think I would have put I'm going to do it again. I'm probably going to put the amylo in the fermenter.
I was going to ask. Okay.
Next time and go a little bit drier.
You're going to try the fermenter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might do both.
All right. Because again, if you go, this will be the second to last shameless plug for the magazine. There are 2 recipes up on beerandbrewing.com that folks can try to mimic. One from Verboten, which is in Colorado, and the other from Kim at Social Kitchen, who is credited with inventing this style, as it were. And they talk about both in the fermenter, but also in the mash as well. And everybody, I think, is experimenting right now. And I think that's sort of the cool thing, like, because maybe even a gradual add or at different steps could provide different results. And that's kind of one of the cool things right now is all of the pro brewers who are doing this right now. There is no real clear roadmap, because even the guy who is driving the truck into the white space still doesn't know where it's going to go, and is sometimes backing up and going from there. I've been asking folks, and as we start to wrap up right now, I wanted to ask you, what's your hope for beer?
My hope is that that people stop saying they don't like beer. Where it's known that where it's just naturally accepted that there's a diversity of flavor and style and carbonation level. Oh, I don't like bubbles. Well, actually, not all. There's some more still beers. If you really don't like any bubbles, then maybe you'll never find a beer. But other than that, flavor wise, it is so diverse that I think I do believe there's a beer for everybody, and I still get severely annoyed with people saying I don't like beer. I don't think that's true. I think they just haven't found the right one yet. And my saxophone teacher used to tell me this. He's like, my job is to become as useless as possible as soon as possible, to the point where basically like I'm teaching myself, or I'm able to do it and stuff. And so I hope that our outreach, that we become as useless as possible as soon as possible, so that everybody just knows and accepts that there's good beer and they can find and navigate the stuff on their own. That's my hope. From a publicity and standpoint and all that, I don't really know. I just want it to be. I want people's creativity to be supported, and nobody to feel like they have to brew something if they don't like making it or they don't like drinking it. Only brew what you like to drink.
Noted musician Chris Cuzme, the founder and brewer at Fifth Hammer Brewing Company, Long Island City, Queens, New York. Please go visit him next time you're visiting.
Find me.
Our great area. It's not hard to find you, right? Give yourself the shameless plug for.
I often have a shirt with my name on it.
You do, I know, and I'm kind of disappointed.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't have it today.
Thanks for crossing 2 rivers, coming to Jersey City, sitting at my kitchen table with all the construction outside and the various interruptions. This is how good conversations happen. So I appreciate you making that happen. If people want to find you on the internet,
you can go to fifthhammerbrewing.com or find us on Twitter and Instagram. Actually, we hardly ever Twitter. Instagram, Fifth Hammer Beer. Fifth Hammer Beer.
For the magazine, please check us out at beerandbrewing.com. There you can find articles on how to become a better home brewer and find out what's happening with your favorite breweries. You can also subscribe to the magazine, which I hope you will do. You can reach me on Twitter if you want to join the conversation at John_Holl, that's HOLL, or on Instagram at Mr. John Holl, again, HOLL. Guests you want to hear, topics you want to hear addressed, or just general comments, you can reach me at johnholl@beerandbrewing.com. And again, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate everybody who tunes in week after week, and especially our guests who sit down and share their knowledge with us. So, Chris, thanks again.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Cheers.
Remember, inebriation is not a destination point. It's a perk for those with good taste.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com, or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.